As I pull up this agenda, I will share a gentle reminder. This is Jessica, and that is the way that we'll make sure that we introduce ourselves as we speak. Since we do have sign language interpretation, it helps the folks that require interpretation understand who's speaking and kind of what our roles are. So I'll try to remind myself to speak slowly for our interpreter, but also say my name. And if you can always try to remember to do the same. I know sometimes it takes a little bit of practice, so I appreciate your patience with us. And seeing it is 4:05, I don't yet see Debbie, but she might be joining us a little bit later, but she was super helpful in coordination with our community partners and with CARB in coordinating today's agenda. So I'm going to share that agenda right now in the chat. So if you make your way there, I will also share really briefly on my screen the agenda for today's meeting. So first, we plan to do a quick round of introductions. We'll try to keep it short. So if you can just share with us your name and affiliation. I know we'll hear from a lot of you in more depth during the main part of the agenda. And then we sort of have two pieces of today's agenda. They might sort of run from one to another, and we're really excited about the folks that are here to join us today. We have an truck enforcement from the community lens, and that's really about the partnership between the California Air Resources Board, Little Manila Rising, and Central Valley Air Quality Coalition as some members of the community that have been involved in some on-the-ground regulatory and enforcement efforts, including some youth advocates. And we're really excited and grateful for Little Manila Rising, Cynthia, who is on today from CVAC, and others who are going to help present this. And then to sort of follow up, and certainly I imagine questions are welcome for both of these, we will have an overview kind of from the actual regulatory side of that from CARB on some of their enforcement. So including some of the findings, maybe some of the conclusions, and just answering some of the questions that you all may have. Finally, we'll discuss next steps and get us out of here. So really looking forward and really grateful for today's discussion. I will, throughout the meeting, I might just drop a couple of things to remind folks in the chat. We do have just an hour, so we won't do a full recap, but I will just do a quick recap to remind you that today's agenda is really part of a series that the Regulatory and Enforcement Subcommittee sort of set out in looking at various sources in the community. So upcoming discussions will focus on off-road sources, on stationary sources, in particular by the DTE Stockton was one of the discussions we'll specifically have. We will also have discussions on fugitive dust, warehouse rules, so lots of engagement on a variety of different sources, and today is our first really kickoff to that. So thank you all for that. I will really quickly just start with the community that is here. So I'll just maybe call on names so we don't have to popcorn. And I will start with, oops, now I have to expand. I'll start with Mr. Ed Ward, if you can unmute and introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. My name's Ed Ward. I'm a CSC member in both Stockton and Fresno. I work for Valley Pacific.
Doug?
Hello, my name is Doug Fisher. I'm a resident of 7116 and been here a long time. Thank you. Advocate for the deaf community as well as the disabled community as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Maria.
Good evening, everyone. Maria Mendez. I'm actually also a member of the Stockton CSC, and I'm on the Board of Trustees for Stockton Unified School District, but pretty soon I will be turned out, some will be part of the residential site. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Tanisha.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tanisha Raj, and I'm the program specialist with Catholic Charities.
Thank you, Tanisha. Cynthia.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Cynthia Pinto Cabrera, she, her, hers with CVAC, Central Valley Air Quality Coalition. Thanks.
Thank you. Pandora.
Hello, Pandora Crowder, resident, South Stockton, also president of the Conway Homes Resident Council here in the Housing Authority.
Thank you. Before I go to agency staff, did I miss any community members? Don't think so yet. So I will go with our CARB colleagues. Eric.
Hi, I'm Eric Bissinger. I'm in the Enforcement Division at CARB.
Justin.
Hello, my name is Justin Shields. I'm also in the Enforcement Division. Specifically, we deal with mobile sources.
Warren.
Hi, I'm Warren Hawkins, and I work for the California Air Resources Board, and I manage the Community Outreach and Enforcement section.
Scott.
Hey, good afternoon. Scott Wall with the California Air Resources Board as well, and I am the AB 617 liaison to the community of Stockton.
Kyle, then Femi.
Hey, everybody, this is Kyle with CARB, of course, pronouns he, him, his. I work on the incentive side of things for community air protection incentives. There's a lot of overlap there between regulations and enforcement incentives. So hopefully I'm not overcrowding everybody with CARB staff and joining up.
And then
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Femi Olalawoye. I'm actually the new branch chief over the community planning branch in the Office of Community Air Protection. So I will be overseeing the team that does oversee the community selection planning as well as the revision of the blueprint. So happy to join you guys today, and look forward to the discussion.
And then before I go to district staff, I think it's super important, and they're such a big part of our work. Can we have our interpreters introduce themselves? Maybe we'll start with Cindy and then Janet.
Certainly. Cindy Bender, ASL interpreter for the meeting today.
Janet Serpa, here also for the meeting today.
Thank you, and thank you so much for the work you do behind the scenes, but certainly in front of us, and we all get to enjoy the service that you provide to the broader community, and certainly to one of our resident members. And then finally, the district staff, I'll start. I'm Jessica Olson. I'm the Director of Community Strategies and Resources, so overseeing 617 and also community engagement work, and I'll pass it to Eric.
Thank you, Jessica. Yes, my name is Eric Salas. I'm also in the AB 617 community in the CSR team. I'll go ahead and pass it on to Mark.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mark Rasmussen. I am the compliance manager for the northern region of the Air District. And I'll pass it to Nick.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nick Pierce. I'm the manager of the Permit Services Group in the Modesto office of the San Joaquin Valley Air District. And I will pass it to Juan.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Juan Luis Carranza, Senior Communications Representative for the Outreach and Communications Department here at the Valley Air District. And then I'll pass it to, is that, I think it's John. Yes.
Thanks, Juan. Hi, everybody. My name is John Stagnero. I'm the Director of Compliance with the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District, and it's great to be here and to see all of you.
Thank you all, and thank you all for allowing us. Typically, we do try to run with kind of the minimal people it takes to run a meeting, since they are certainly community driven, but we were so excited, especially on the district side, and I think a few folks on the CARB side, to hear from you all today, which is why I think a lot of us brought some folks to really learn from you about the recent efforts. So thank you for allowing us to be at your meeting. And I do see, maybe not to put them completely on the spot, but we just finished introductions, so it's perfect timing for Jonathan Pruitt. If you can unmute yourself and just introduce yourself really quickly, and then we're about to pass it on to the next presenter.
Sound good. Hey everyone, Jonathan Pruitt, Environmental Justice Program Coordinator at Catholic Charities.
Perfect timing. Well, thank you all so much. Well, as mentioned, our first presentation up, I'm going to pass it, I think, to Cynthia, maybe to kick us off. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Cynthia.
Yeah, thank you so much. Since Matt and Little Manila Rising staff got caught up in a tour that's happening in Stockton right now, I'll be taking over on their behalf to kind of share a little bit about what the project we've been working on is and how we've been working with CARB staff, and then pass that off to them to talk a little bit about it. But Matt shared some slides with me that I'm going to share with you all. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. It looks like I need one moment, please.
It says all participants, so let me know if that is not allowing you to share.
Give me 1 second. I just need to give it my computer access to share screen. Okay, it says I need to leave the meeting real quick and then I'll be right back. I think there's a new Zoom setting that I haven't updated yet.
No problem. It's actually perfect timing because Dr. Catherine Grupa-White just joined us and we just did a quick round of introductions, Dr. Grupa-White. So if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, this is Catherine with the Central Valley Air Quality Coalition.
Thank you. Awesome. So I see Cynthia just logged in. So Cynthia, if it doesn't work, feel free to email me the slides and I'm happy to share them on the screen while you talk over them. It's up to you. Oh, I think you are muted.
Okay, it's not letting me share my screen right now. Let me. Okay, I'll email it to you right now, Jessica.
Perfect.
Share it with you.
Not a problem.
Perfect. Okay, you should have it now.
Perfect. So let you know, like the email hit the airwaves here in a second. Well, in the, oops, I see a few folks. Oh, I don't know if we're joining or people are just turning on and off cameras. It looks, maybe it's like the same folks. I don't have it yet, but it might be here really shortly. Aha, perfect. All right, I'm pulling them up now. Should be good. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. One second. It is being very, you might not like that I trying to get into your Google Drive or whatever.
Yeah, apologies for whatever reason my Zoom isn't letting me share my screen.
No worries. Let's see really quickly. Try one more time. It's maybe not letting me open it. Oh, here we go. Let's try this. Awesome. Okay, we're good. Sorry that. Thank you everyone for your patience. Sharing my screen now. It was a lot of security options. It was a very secure presentation. So let's play and then take it away, Cynthia. I'll just say next slide and I will advance. Oops, you're muted again.
Thank you, Jessica, for sharing the screen when I had some Zoom difficulties. But just quickly wanted to touch with you all on the project that we've been working on to co-power solutions for air pollution here in Stockton. Next slide, please. So we're really focusing on community-based research here, and some of the key points to highlight when it comes to community-based research is the following list here of sharing and be mindful of power, careful listening, making sure we're asking question assumptions and preconceptions, valuing different perspectives. So that's a little bit about the community-based research approach that we're taking, and have looked at some literature on how to conduct community-based research. So we're trying to implement that in the current project that we're doing here in collaboration with CARB, and happy to share some of those resources on that community-based research that we also did. If anybody else is interested in learning a little bit more about how the methodology kind of came to be. So next slide, please. So this is an overview, bird's eye view of the Stockton community, where we see so many different pollution sources impacting the selected community. We notice a lot of highways, a lot of truck traffic. So some of the things that are really sticking out in this image, trains, like cargo equipment and forklifts, a lot of things that are related to trucks. So just wanted to share this overview of the community to show all of the different sources that are impacting Stockton, and how a lot of the highways and trucks are really in close proximity and impacting the communities, which rightfully so. A lot of community residents indicated that trucks are a major concern, and really excited to really try to identify some impacts of those trucks in the communities. So next slide, please. So the pollution that we're really dealing with when it comes to trucks is particulate matter, be different sizes, made up of different things, varying on the number that's next to the PM particle. They're more harmful than others, with diesel particulates being worse than dust and really impacting our health. And we've had a lot of conversations in the AB 617 space about particle pollution and particulate matter and how it impacts our health, but just wanted to reiterate how important this pollution is when it comes to our health and how it's impacting the AB 617 community here in Stockton. So with that, next slide, please. I think, yeah, highlighting PM 2.5, with it being the most dangerous of all, and being a major source of concern here in the Valley. So go ahead, Jessica. In this next image, wanted to really highlight how air pollution, the concentrations of diesel exhaust can be spread out in the community, since Stockton is located to so many different highways, and a lot of folks are living next to these highways, and wanted to depict the zones of the greatest exposure and seeing how it kind of rises but also flattens out amongst the communities living next to the freeways, and not only communities like schools and other major places where communities really gather. Next slide, please, Jessica. And here, Cal Enviro Screen 4.0 indicator map that we've seen quite a few times throughout the 617 process, really highlighting where some of these major exposure areas for diesel particulate matter really are. As we can, some of the darker ones are the most impacted. The lighter ones are a little bit more fortunate to have not as much, but that's definitely related to our research and seeing how traffic really impacts health and other community members here in Stockton. Next slide, please. So here's some data pulled from the Clean Air Task Force, where the Stockton Lodi area pulled some numbers and did some research on what diesel emissions really does to our health, so looking at deaths, heart attacks, acute bronchitis, respiratory symptoms, emergency room visits, a lot of things that we're seeing in the Stockton Lodi area, really emphasis on the diesel portion of it. And Jess, can you click the next so we can see the little images coming up, really emphasizing how deadly diesel is, with the dye highlighted and the skull being depicted there, that this diesel particulate matter is really dangerous for our health. And we can see that there, and also happy to share the link for this data so you can kind of look around and see how Stockton kind of compares to other places as well. So the three main ways to really clean their air, reducing emissions, filter pollutants, and move pollution away, that we're really advocating for, and we're looking at ways with this work that we're doing with CARB to be able to do these three different approaches to pollution. So next slide, please, Jessica. So vehicle electrification, there's so much work being done in the Stockton 617 community to be able to electrify a lot of the trucks. So really excited for a lot of that work coming forward in Stockton, and seeing how that kind of rolls out throughout the implementation process. Thank you. Next slide. And also briefly wanted to touch on air filters and buffers, ways to protect ourselves. And while a lot of this work is being done in 617, so air filters in our homes, home weatherizations, sound walls, vegetative barriers, healthy and safety zones are really important ways that we can protect ourselves from that kind of image that we saw earlier, where we see the emissions exhaust being distributed from the freeways. These are ways that we can look into protecting ourselves. And I know there's other subcommittees working on these things, like the indoor air subcommittee that's working on air filtration, home weatherization, other subcommittees that are working on things like vegetative barriers. So that's a lot of good work that's related to how we can mitigate some of the impacts. Next slide, please. So some California freeway studies have shown that there's about a 70% drop in particulate pollution, where there's about 500 feet of safe distance. Levels approach background concentration at 2,000 feet. Recent studies also show that changes in air pollution levels depend on the time of day, the significant impacts, how many feet we are away from these major different kinds of freeways, and kind of differ between night and early mornings as well. So there's a little bit of some more statistics and data on looking into how trucks impact the community. Next slide, please. And here, looking at some images from Google Maps and in Stockton, and seeing the distances between some homes, and where the Hazelton monitor used to be in the San Joaquin County Public Health Service, about the distance next to these freeways are definitely impactful and meaningful to where and how diesel pollution impacts our health. As mentioned about with the safer distances, they play a major role, and how close we are to these freeways are really important. Next slide, please. So here's just some quick little images about demand on congested roads and reducing it. There's different tolls, permits, bans that could potentially play a role in relieving a lot of congestion from trucks going into our neighborhoods, different options that we can take. And here's the image on the right is the City of Stockton truck routes, and we see the different truck routes that impact the communities and how they're driving through these communities. So a lot of congested roads with a lot of truck traffic is what we've seen, and many community residents have pointed out. Next slide, please. And what we're really kind of hoping for in the near future, as not only in 617 advocacy efforts, but other efforts as well, is building towards more walkable communities that are no longer so congested with so many truck routes and truck traffic, but places that are more walkable and sustainable. Next slide, please. And with that said, here's just a really great hope for the future and depiction of what's been done in other areas, with Boston Central Freeway, which is on the left, being demolished and turned into more of a greenway, walkable community with green space open for more folks. So this is just some work that's being done in other places that hopefully can be something that's done in many 617 communities, including Stockton. So with that, that's all we're wanted to share a little bit of background on the project and how we kind of came to be, and the methodology that we've been using based on all all of this, safer distances, air filters and buffers, and some of the data on how diesel particulate matter is impacting our health. But with that, I can, I don't know, Jessica, if you want to do any questions or pass it off to Carb right now.
I think maybe if there's no questions, I might have just a little bit of a question, but it may be, I don't know if it makes sense to go to Carb. So maybe I'll pause, see if there's other questions, and then I'll ask my question.
I just had a quick comment, Jessica. And I was in Reading yesterday, and I noted that residential did not essentially was almost 100 yards off of the center of I-5 in many newer developments. And that is also the case in the San Antonio, Texas, New Braunfels area, where they take 100 yards from the center of the roadway. Texas allows for commercial, like stores, still at like 75 yards, but residential cannot move closer than 100 yards. So I really think your idea, Cynthia, is a strong one. How we make that work in any of our impacted communities is the real difficult piece, but certainly very valuable. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to echo the thanks. I thought it's nice to see, and I think we were in practice in early Stockton days of having different community groups share presentations about air quality and sort of their take, especially folks like you, Cynthia, who work in this space. And it was nice to just see a different take on presenting the same sort of challenges and express the health concerns and the land use concern, all the same concerns we talked about, but from your perspective. So I just want to thank you for that. My question is, but maybe Carb is going to get to this, was I know that the reason, just, I know some folks might have heard this, but Matt Holmes from Little Manila Rising, as Cynthia mentioned earlier, was unable to join us. But the reason Matt Holmes and Cynthia were sort of the two folks that were identified for this group or for this this presentation today was because of their leadership in partnering with Carb. So I was hoping to hear a little bit from their perspective, but I don't know if that's part of Carb's presentation, is that coordination. So I don't want to steal the thunder from Carb's presentation, but certainly would love to hear maybe from Cynthia's perspective, just kind of what that community work is, beyond just, I think, the great foundation that you just laid.
Yeah, I think let's hear from Carb a little bit before that, and then we can share a little bit more about it. I think they're going to answer some of your questions.
Sounds great. Well, then I think I'm passing it to Eric, and then we'll go from there. Thanks, Cynthia.
All right, thanks. I'm Eric Bissinger, so I'm going to go over the next portion here. I'm hoping I can share my slides. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so this picture here is kind of what you were getting at, Jessica. I mean, this is meant to illustrate and reinforce that the activities that I'm going to be talking about here today were based on this collaborative approach between us and some community members. So with the process, we gained lots of invaluable information and as to what's happening in the community. And so today I'm going to go ahead and share what we experienced. And so here's my presentation overview. We're going to go over the Fresno Avenue and the Washington Elementary. That's kind of where we focused this strategy at. So we're going to talk about what we saw and what we did. So here is Fresno Avenue. It's kind of off to the right there, and Washington Elementary is denoted with that blue star. So the reason the community identified this location is because it's just too much truck traffic going by that school right there. If you look at the map, Washington is where that blue star is. So across the street from the school is a Duraflame facility. That's that yellow one right there. And if I were to go to counterclockwise, there's Fannie Newman, there's Lehigh Cement, there's Wilmar Oil and Fats, there's Portland Cement, M&L Commodities, which is our product distribution company. There's California Ammonia, Calamaco Cogen, the Clean Planet Inc., which is a waste disposal facility. There's Headwaters Resources, which is a metal fabrication facility. Westway Feed, which is an agricultural feed store or feed, facility. Then the Port of Stockton is there with a bunch of material handling going on there, and then Cary Transit, which is another product distribution company. So as you can see, this is an overburdened area, and that's why so many trucks are going down South Fresno Avenue, right past this elementary school. So this is what we saw. So while we were there conducting our activities, and in the area, there's a few things that were brought in light, such as this confusing truck route map. There is misleading and missing or damaged signs. We did see some idling occurring, and then we saw an unsafe bus walk. So here's the truck route maps. First thing that we did notice is how confusing the truck routes are on these maps. According to the city of Stockton's truck route map, and that's the one on the left, the South Fresno Avenue is designated to carry for only flammable liquids to go down South Fresno. That's that red line there. And then on the right is the Surface Transportation Association Assistance Act truck route. And this map, it shows this big black line going through, towards South Fresno. But if you look at the legend on the right, it doesn't tell you what the black line is for. It shows red as the state route. This pink is the city routes. So it's kind of just confusing. It's just unclear on what exactly is that black line representing as far as a truck route, and it would be difficult for a truck driver to kind of interpret this. Okay, and then here's the truck routing signs. Working with the CHP, they assisted us during this two-day event, and then they made it pretty clear that they can't really enforce truck routes if the signs aren't clearly proper signage along the roads on what can go. So these signs show that you can go up South Fresno Avenue. It doesn't say anything about the flammable liquids. So proper signs and clarifying that truck route maps on those websites, so drivers would be able to identify permitted trucking routes, and it would really help the CHP to be able to enforce it. Okay, so idling. We did witness some idling during the two-day event, and on subsequent, when we would come back and visit with the city and do other things in the area, we did notice there was idling going on. So rather than writing citations, we approached the truck drivers and asked them to turn off their engine. And then we would give them some idling outreach information. And everyone was cooperative as far as turning off the truck. So we believe increased outreach and additional rotational enforcement activities by CARB, possibly the Port Police, the Air District, and we could really help reduce some unnecessary idling going along this area, because it is right across the street from the school and there's homes there too. So back in 2019, we provided some no idling signs to the city, but when we were there this time, we noticed that some were no longer present or visible, the trees were blocking it. And as you can see, is this sign here is the sign is upside down. So we followed up with the Public Works Department and we gave them 10 additional no idling signs, and the city committed to posting them, across the street from this long stretch of parking area, like across the street from the school. And today we were notified via email that they have installed it. They've reduced some of the vegetation so you can see the idling signs. We haven't been there to confirm but they did email us this morning. So they did it. Okay, and here's the crosswalk, the unsafe crosswalk. This crosswalk leads to a bus stop across the street. So as kids get out of school, they cross this street, and there's a parent pickup area right there also. So as you cross South Fresno Avenue from West to North Street, and as you can see, it's developed like significant ripples and grooves along the road. And so we think it might be a product of just the high amount of trucks going in up and down the street right here. So as you can see, it doesn't look very safe to walk across from the damage that's sustained, to get over to the bus stop, or you have to meet your parents to pick you up. So what we did was we deployed the portable emissions acquisition system, and I'll describe that in a minute. And the automatic license plate reader we used, and we did inspections, and we conducted an origin destination survey. So here's the portable emission acquisition system. So you can see that white pole that kind of goes over into the street. So a truck will pass underneath that, and the van there has all kinds of emission reader equipment in there. And it'll notify us if there's a high polluting truck that we could, then you can see staff down at the end of the road there to pull them over and inspect the vehicle. So that's kind of what the Peaks does. So we deployed this on South Fresno Avenue across the street from the elementary school. And we also, but we did not identify any vehicles that emitted excessive smoke or that appeared to be corrosive. We didn't, during this deployment, we didn't identify anything like that.
Eric, just really quickly, sometimes you cut out, and I think it just might be a matter of like proximity. So
I gotta get closer.
Yes, sorry, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry too. Okay, so here's the license plate reader. You can see that little camera right there on the ground. Basically, it takes photos of the trucks as they go by, and it captures the license plate. So with that, we can do count how many trucks are going down the road. We can take the take the license plate information and run it through our DMV to get more information on what kind of truck it is, what year it is. We also have our own internal trucker databases that we can check compliance on any trucks that came through. So on this day, we identified 834 heavy-duty vehicle trucks passed by the license plate reader. And of the 834, 437 of them were observed traveling southbound on South Fresno, headed towards the port. So we did truck counts and origin destination survey. So during a 2-hour period on Tuesday morning from about 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., we manually counted approximately 200 heavy-duty vehicles using South Fresno Avenue, and of them, only 7 of them were designated for carrying this flammable liquid. So according to the truck route, only those 7 should have been going down that road. But again, with the signs and the mapping, it's kind of confusing. So we also performed the origin destination surveys. So when the were pulled over and they were getting their inspection, we would ask the drivers where they were coming from, where they were going, why they used South Fresno Avenue. Drivers stated that they were coming from Highway 99 or Interstate 5, and they were going to the Stockton Cement Terminal, Penny Newman, Rough and Ready. And so we also asked them why are you using this road? And most of the reasons provided were driving down this road were due to the fact that they have traditionally just used this route, and the route is faster and easier than other alternatives. So inspections, we inspected about 60 vehicles during the 2-day event. Our inspection stations were located at the Port Road 13 to capture vehicles exiting the port. And then we're doing inspections across the street from the school on Fresno Ave. So here's the results by the numbers. So I'll give you a minute to kind of look at this. To see some of the results of our efforts. Let's look at that for a minute. And then, so the next slide is my follow-up slide. This is so, after the event, what did we do? We met with the city to discuss the signs and the crosswalk and the bus stop there across the street from the school. And so the city told us today that they have installed the signs. We just haven't been out there to double check. And we also scouted, the boundary for other locations for a future deployment of this strategy. And we're planning that in October. And then we also met with the community members just to talk about what we saw and what we found and next steps to prepare for this presentation. So that's pretty much my summary of what we did. So, if there's any questions you have or comments, and do you have any suggestions on how we can improve this? And is there another location that you can think of where we can deploy this strategy? And so, just kind of open it up to questions.
I see Doug has a question. Go ahead, Doug.
Thank you. Eric, what I see one of your slides that have a number of truck drivers have entered the port. Was it like 973 daily attendants? I'm sorry, that's the one. 834. So it's a heavy emission that come from the truck from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. are the average daily that goes there to that particular south side of Stockton.
So I think, Doug, if I can, it was a little hard to hear. You're asking that 834, is that like the average that we see every day during that same time period? Question?
That's correct.
So yeah, this is from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. on those 2 days for the 834. So as you can see, that's a lot of trucks going up and down that street, right across the street from an elementary school.
And I guess maybe just a comment might be, this was a normal, like there wasn't any particular reason that at least you were aware of that would be an abnormal amount. So it's possible that that's the average on a typical day, weekday, that same time.
Yeah. Yeah, and this 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., that's kind of school hours also, so just to point that out.
And just to piggyback off of that, that is just a sample of those 2 days. So that could have been a low day for truck traffic in South Fresno. In order to get like the average vehicle traffic or like the heavy duties, we'd have to be out there more often to see it. But from what we can see, the 834 is extremely high and compared to other numbers on like the county's box track plan, or that the city would imagine traveling down that road.
I also have a follow-up question to that, but I know Ed raised his hand first and it might be similar, so I'll let Ed go first.
Thank you, Jessica. Can we go back to that slide, Eric? A couple of questions. Did the PQ system identify the 4 emissions control label site? Those were label citations, so those had to be from the actual inspection itself. I'm very interested that that there were no high emitters. I do know that most of the trucks you probably looked at were late model trucks. So, but I did have another question. It says you audited, audits initiated. You did 24 PSIP, the smoke inspections. were those just stop and inspect process?
No,
I can answer that one, Eric.
Go ahead.
So for the PSIP, the Streamlined Periodic Smoke Inspection Program audits that you're bringing up, Ed, those are like desk audits. So what we do is we research the company, figure out the size of their fleet, and we basically send them a letter requesting their information and their documents showing that they've met the requirements of PSIP, of periodic smoke inspection, the periodic smoke inspection program. So what that would be testing their vehicle every year if it's not newer than 4 years old, or starting next year every year. So there's some requirements. I can drop a link to the regulation that's found in if you want to see more about that.
No, I'm actually fairly versed in it. We have quite a few trucks. I just wondered if this was an on-street actual, or if it was a desk piece that you picked up of fleets that were in the area and that hadn't met their obligation. If this actually were the trucks that were driving down the street, because that's the smoke inspection program is critical to reducing particulate emissions in the area.
And Ed, as part of our inspections, whenever a truck is identified for an inspection or pulled over, we do have inspectors out there that are certified to conduct the smoke opacity test on these trucks.
Okay.
And the smoke opacity truck tests are what is required in the periodic smoke inspection program if they're not doing other requirements. I don't think there's enough time to get into that, but if anybody had questions about that, I can drop my email in the chat.
Thank you. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you. So several of you know that we actually we invited those that are part of our truck subcommittee to be a part of this meeting. And I think something that Justin just said reminded me of a very important piece of that truck subcommittee, which is the heavy duty vehicle count, and compared to just sort of like city or county plans or kind of known or, models versus reality. And we do all know, I think all of us are aware, but just as a reminder, the port, I believe, is finished and just doing kind of some final analysis with their contractor to do a truck route study literally in this area. And I know that they did some great work specifically at Washington Elementary as well. So I'm just really curious, I guess just in looking over really the next month or so, we're hoping to have kind of a final or at least a draft sort of summary of that work to our truck subcommittee. And maybe we'll also just make sure that that update comes to this subcommittee, knowing not everyone has capacity to go to both and knowing that there's great overlap. Because I think that's an important piece, is not to just talk about the counts, but also talk about the truck routes. That was a really big part of Eric's presentation about how they're confusing and clearly not necessarily being used, at least in the way they're intended. So I think that's important. I had a couple of questions, if folks don't mind, but I want to defer to community members first. So I see a couple of great location suggestions in the chat. Jonathan Pruitt said, hey, right next to Edison High School. And it looks like Justin wrote that down. Dr. Catherine Gruper-White had to leave, but she just wanted to thank Cynthia for presenting and representing, and also thank Little Manila and CARB for the partnership. So I just wanted to elevate that. I'll pause if there's not a community member question or comment. I have a couple of other questions as well. Okay, well, so a couple of questions I had was one of the comments that we heard anecdotally that wasn't necessarily mentioned here today, but a discussion I've had a lot with Matt and folks at Little Manila Rising were, at least from his experience with this program, a lot of the folks that were, I don't know if it was part of the inspection or if it was part of the automated license plate reader. I'm unsure of the exact kind of mechanism, but a lot of truckers were either meant to be soon out of compliance or concerned about maybe fleet compliance with the truck and bus rule. And he did mention often times when folks you all spoke to some of these truckers, oftentimes they were small fleets or single owner operator. So I don't know if anyone on this call that was a part of that has any update or maybe even anecdotal stories that they've heard, because it did come up in our truck subcommittee when we talked about the need to comply to take advantage of incentives, at least as the way incentives are right now. And I wanted to just give folks an opportunity to share, since Matt can't share on his own behalf, if they had any other comments about maybe some of the types of truckers you spoke with.
I know when we took the license plate reader information back, and we ran it through, we checked for compliance on that, and we did identify a few trucks that are going to be out of compliance. They're going to be out of compliance soon. So, I mean, that's some information that we could share. So, yeah, and then we've had a lot of discussions as far as incentives, moving forward with, I think it was one of the strategies in the SERP was to fund some zero emission trucks. So that's going to be a good discussion that maybe we could bring up again,
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And certainly, and like I said, in speaking a little bit with some partners, including Matt, just making sure that we're acknowledging, like I said, that's what I had heard, but I'm not sure if there's other folks that were part of that, or if just across the state, that's something that we're hearing. But I definitely want to make sure we're coming from a place of equity when it comes to some of the truck programs, and we're allowing kind of some of the smaller truckers to take advantage. And like I said, it was, folks were talking about this particular effort and making themselves aware of maybe some of the struggles and folks complying with that rule. So that's the only reason I mention it. I do see Jonathan's hand and then Femi as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up. I mean, Jessica, you brought up equity. I felt like you were kind of reading my mind right there. So yeah, equity. I think the other approach that isn't hit on is also understanding a business that's right there. So that's good, a good spot for a lot of truckers to use Fresno Avenue to go to that taqueria that's right there on that corner. I'm not sure if it's the majority of their clients, or I guess their clientele, or whatever the proper name is are the truckers. But we just really need to understand, we have to be prepared to, if we were to redirect those trucks, also be aware of how that's going to change their business. And so we have to be sort of equitable on thinking about alternative strategies to working with the Port of Stockton as well as the taqueria on a sort of a mobile hub over there on the other side of the port that allows them to pretty much hit both sides of the area. It allows allows the truckers to go to a place for food still, and not far. So it's a win-win. And also it doesn't hurt their actual building because it's a staple for people. As talking with some of the box track residents, they said it is staple, and it's like their safe space because no one really messes over there. It's pretty much people get food at times on Fridays or on Saturdays, typically on Fridays. And yeah, so it's a spot for everything. So I just want to make sure that is, on people's minds. You're scientists, researchers, have it on your mind that what we do, we have to make sure there are alternatives to also making sure that business doesn't get impacted. Thank you.
Jonathan, I just wrote that down. That's so important. And I'm wondering if you haven't already, let's try to share that information directly to the contractor that's doing that truck reroute study. And if they haven't already incorporated things like that, I think the sooner the better we inform her and connect with Jeff as well. I think that's a really important thing you brought up. And I don't think I've heard that brought up yet in this discussion. So I thank you for that. And go ahead, Femi.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks again. This is Femi Olalawoye, CARB. I wanted to speak a little bit to the issue that you raised earlier, Jessica, with regard to how do we approach this idea of providing additional support for these fleets that we know are coming out of compliance fairly soon, and understanding the constraints of our incentive programs. As you guys know, incentives by and large don't apply funding to non-compliant fleets in a sense. So the window is actually very small when it comes to the majority of our programs. And that is normally, or well, by and large, it's a statutory requirement or a policy or internal program requirement. So these are things that are elements that we do need to consider as part of a discussion like this. So I will say, we want to approach something like this very cautiously and really think about how do we provide the support we're looking for and do so in a way that is both constructive and informative for folks that might want to look to providing similar support in their areas as well. So I want to put this idea of, and I think Eric mentioned it earlier, in the actual community emission reduction program, with there being that element in there, it allows us a unique opportunity to actually take a look at that and maybe apply cap incentives, our community air protection incentives. There is a really unique opportunity here where we can be surplus to regulation in a sense, while still applying in a way that aligns with an improved project plan or an improved, community emission reduction program. So there is an avenue there that I think we can explore. But again, I just want to make sure that we are cautious and really take a look at how do we do this in a way that is, the best way forward. And I think one of the things that I'll also throw out there as a thought is really, again, looking towards going above and beyond regulation, but also providing additional support to small fleets, providing the support that is needed in order to bring folks to a point where they will be compliant with upcoming regulations. We have to take into account the regulatory landscape that's ahead of us, where we are moving towards transitioning to zero emission equipment. So this may be an opportunity to provide support in that way. And I think again, we can think through how to do that with these fleets that are existing. And I think there's a lot more discussion to be had on that, and look forward to having that with you guys.
Thank you, Femi. And I'll just add that to kind of all the credit, I think a lot of folks are kind of coalescing around a similar concept that Femi just mentioned. And I got a chance to speak with Femi and some CARB folks about, I've spoken a little bit about with Matt, and I know each of one of us have had conversations about taking the SERP measure. It would mean going to CARB and kind of getting that project plan process. It would be different than what's right now, and getting maybe using the SERP to our advantage and creating maybe a different, something outside of the current guidelines and allowing us to help those small truckers out. So I just appreciate CARB's willingness to work with us and others' willingness to work with us and get some of these folks that they'd have to buy a truck in like a year ago to have it delivered in time for the end of this year. And, so some of them have yet to do that. And as I'll just quote Matt Holmes, because I know he wishes he was here, like they need to put food on their table and we don't want to put them out of business if we can get them to be a part of our, cleaner air effort. So thanks to Femi and the support for that. I see Justin and then Ed. I do know we're a little over time. I think we're having a great discussion. So hopefully folks, if you're able to stay, thank you for your time, and I'll pass it off to Justin.
Hi, so I wanted to kind of piggyback off of what Jonathan had said. Like, he brought up an excellent point about equity and about the taqueria. And that was when we were going out there, one of the things that we didn't want to impact was the business to the taqueria, because we understood how important it was. And I think Eric touched on it a little bit, but I just wanted to expand on some of the things that we had done. So he had mentioned that we were out there doing outreach for idling. So when we had staff out there, when a truck driver was pulling over to go to the taqueria, we were talking to them and giving them outreach materials, explaining like the health effects of leaving their truck idling on like the residents and the kids at school. And after having some of those conversations, they understood why it is important to turn off their trucks if they're going to go to the taqueria. And that's why we weren't ticketing at that time. We were doing the outreach because we figured it was more important to do that education, so that way we weren't impacting that truck, but we were also letting them know why idling was not okay in that area and why we provided the signs. In addition, when we were doing the origin and destination surveys, what we were finding is that a lot of people are using that route, the South Fresno Avenue, multiple times a day. And sometimes, one time a day they might go for coffee, and one time a day they might go for lunch. but then the rest of the time they're going just because that's the way that they're used to. When the city about 10 years or so ago made Navy Drive, right? They took away the off-ramp from the Orche, and you know, there are alternative routes to some of the facilities instead of going down South Fresno that happen to be quicker or less vehicle miles than going the way that they're used to. So, you know, this is something too, and I think Eric asked for questions or anything. You have his email, you have my email that we're trying to learn from and do better with as well. So Jonathan or anybody here, if you have any like suggestions moving forward, you know, please let us know, because we want to do better and we want to be better as we do these things.
Thank you, Justin. Let's go to Ed.
Thank you. I'll make this quick. There's some unintended consequences that we're facing as industry that that everyone needs to know about. And they are exactly what Jonathan spoke to and Femi spoke to. They're inequitable. And it's this. 2025, no truck can be sold in California that has tailpipe emissions greater than 0.02. The only technology that's available that meets that standard is CNG. It takes literally 18 months to get a new truck, and understand that within a very short time, we are going to take that picture of any kind of new truck, regardless of what kind of technology it has on it, and we're going to funnel it down to just one sellable truck in California with an internal combustion engine. And that is going to put a lot of pressure on the small trucking fleets. It's going to be disastrous, and we need to work on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. This was such a great conversation. A lot of folks, and Ed knows this because he's a part of that. We do have, it's gonna take me a second. I'm wondering if Eric or Juan Luis can help me out and remind me when our truck subcommittee is scheduled, because I do believe it's in a couple of weeks. And I would love to continue this conversation, particularly about incentives. And I also think it's a good time to bring in our truck reroute partner, the study partner with the port, because I think we heard a lot like separate from that study. It was sort of almost like confirmed with a CARB study that there's like a super big need to assess the routes, take some action. And I think it's good time to just have that discussion. Eric, I see you unmuted. Solid.
Thank you, Jess. Yes, it looks like October 4th, we're going to have our heavy duty truck study, or my computer ever loads, heavy duty truck subcommittee on the 4th of October.
Awesome. So you should all have it on your calendar. If you don't, just like raise your hand and drop your name in the chat, and one of us will make sure we forward that meeting to you all. I just want to again thank, oh, go ahead, Ed, before I wrap up. Oh.
No, I'm sorry. You said raise your hand if you want to get information on it. So.
Okay. Let's get Ed. Okay, cool. Perfect. Let's get Ed. Make sure he's at that meeting. I think it's super important. And also, I just want to thank everyone. If I could ask if the CARB and folks, and if Cynthia, I do have the slides from Cynthia because I shared them, I just realized. But if CARB, if you can send us those slides, we'd love to post them so folks can take a look at them that weren't able to meet with us today. And if there are no other questions, we will be, of course, posting the recording to this, but also we'll meet with kind of our core group that do the regulatory enforcement subcommittee meetings. We'll debrief a little bit and then see what next steps are for this topic. And like I said, I will remind the group that we do have several upcoming topics that we'll reach out to folks to start scheduling those meetings, which will include some mobile source stuff, some stationary source stuff, some area-wide source stuff, all the different sources. So this is one of several sort of like seminars. So thank you again. And I see that Femi threw something great in the chat. Just so all of you know, we do archive and post the chat as well. So definitely take a look at the sort of small fleet assistance link that Femi just dropped in, but we will also make sure it's posted on the website. So thank you all for your time. I really appreciate it. I echo Maria Mendez's sentiments, and thanks for the extra time, and have a great evening.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, everybody.